welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. Happy to be with you on another Tuesday, bringing you another author interview. Hope you're having a great week so far. As we get started, I do want to remind you, as always, to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're either listening to or watching this episode on. Helps the algorithm, gets the podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. Greatly appreciated. Also greatly appreciated if you are of a mind to, you can go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or a donation. That not only helps the podcast, it helps the network as a whole. Also, as I said, greatly appreciated. All of the support you give the podcast, whatever form of support that takes, is very much appreciated by me, by everyone at the network. I know I say it every week, but it's true every week. I really appreciate all of my listeners, viewers, commenters, lurkers, whatever you are, whether this is your first time seeing this podcast, hearing this podcast, or you've been with me from the beginning or somewhere in between. I really appreciate everyone who has supported this podcast over the years. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Thank you so much for all of your support. How is your week going? How was your weekend? I was talking to actually 2 or 3 of my students when I asked them how their weekend was, couldn't remember. And I thought they were all between the ages of 8 and 11. And I thought, you are way too young to not remember what you did this weekend. Frequently happens to me. Monday comes around and I think, what did I do this weekend? The weekend was quiet, not much happening. We went over on Friday. Our friends from London were leaving. We always try to go over the morning that they leave to help them get everything settled and situated before they leave. So we did that on Friday. I had lessons on Saturday and Sunday, not very many, just a few, and had this author interview on Saturday, and that's kind of it. Just hung out with the hubby and the puppies, and not much. If there's more, I can't remember what it was. I don't know. Oh, you know what? I had introvert time on Sunday, which is nice. Since my husband and I both work from home, that doesn't happen as often as it might, but he spent time with a friend of ours Sunday night, so I got a few hours of introvert time, which I love. I watched stupid television and I hung out with the dogs. Our old dog, Chalupa, he's almost 12. He doesn't like change. He really doesn't like change. And so if I leave and he's here with my husband, he doesn't like that. If the hubby leaves and he's just here with me, he doesn't like that. So he was like pawing at me and trying to get my attention a lot. Finally I took him outside, I fed him, I did all the things, and then finally took him for their nightly walk, and he settled down a little bit. But he really doesn't like when we're not both where we're supposed to be and hanging out with him. That's just what he wants. And he's old. He deserves to get what he wants, right? But that was the weekend, and now it's Tuesday, and we're off to another week, and I've had students who also didn't remember what they did this weekend, so I feel better because, like I said, they're between the ages, the ones that I asked who couldn't remember were between the ages of 8 and 11. Actually, you know what? It was 3 boys and they were all 10 or 11. So maybe there's something about that age. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But let's go ahead and talk about our author interview for this week. This week I am speaking with author J.M. Shaw about her book Forsaken Souls. This is actually the 4th book in her Callum Walker series. So if you're looking for a new fantasy series, there are 4 of these books out. It's not finished yet. The series isn't finished, but you do have 4 books to read. Let me give you the description of Forsaken Souls. And that is as follows. Driven south by their brethren in the northern kingdom, the Dergaren have bided their time for nearly 2 centuries, nursing hatred and plotting vengeance since their defeat in the Great Elven War. As a new conflict draws ever closer, Queen Jobella struggles to assert her authority over her northern domain, battling civil unrest, sabotage, and misinformation while attempting to mend fractured alliances. Meanwhile, Callum and Jax set out on a perilous journey to repair the veil separating the magical realm from the human world. Unbeknownst to them, their path leads directly into the heart of danger, where they are captured by the Dergaren. Imprisoned in the hellish grotto beneath the subterranean city of Elfarion, Callum and Jax are forced to work or die at their enemy's command. However, danger turns to horror when Callum learns of the Dargarian king's plans for the Northern Kingdom and the rest of the realm. What is to come will be a reckoning, not a war. It will be a battle for the ages, where both lives and souls are at stake, and death is not the worst outcome. Imperiled by violence, assailed by evil energy, and tempted by dark magic, Callum must stand against the rising darkness. But first, he needs to find the strength to face his buried anguish, even at the risk of fracturing what remains of his sanity. Yet there is hope for a happy ending, if only Callum can summon the courage to accept it. Okay, so that is the description of Forsaken Souls. Again, it is the fourth book in the Callum Walker series. Like I said, if you are a fan of fantasy, you have four to read. This is high fantasy, but with elements of urban fantasy as well. So Jennifer will talk a little bit about that during the interview, but it starts out as urban fantasy because there is that veil between the fantasy world, the magical world, and the quote-unquote normal, regular, however you want to call it, world. And Callum lives in that world. So when we meet him at the beginning of the series, it's kind of urban fantasy. It's in that fashion, but has elements of both urban fantasy and high fantasy. So whether you're a fan of urban or high fantasy, you'll get elements of both of those. This one definitely starts in the magical realm, so you're smack in high fantasy when this book starts. But like I said, there's 4 books, so there's a lot of different elements, a lot of different characters and stories and plot lines that you can find many different fantasy tropes within. Let's go ahead and let Jennifer talk about this 4th book in the series and the series as a whole. Again, this one is called Forsaken Souls. It's the 4th book in the Callum Walker series. The author is J.M. Shaw. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk not only about the book Forsaken Souls, but about the series as a whole. Before we do that, though, if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment, introducing yourself so my listeners can get to know you.
Okay. I'm a writer at heart. I'm a dreamer. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I thought my sole purpose in life was to babysit. And now I am a published author.
Wonderful. And how many children do you have?
I have 2 young boys.
2. Okay. So lots of
Yes.
energy at your house,
Oh, yes.
probably.
Very loud and very noisy. Not right now. They're not here.
You have 2 boys. I have 2 dogs. So it could.
Yes. They are
They're
just as noisy and they can be just as rambunctious as kids too.
yes, exactly. Some days. All right. So the Callum Walker series, Forsaken Souls, is it Callum? Is that how you say it?
Yep, that is
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
So Forsaken Souls is the 4th book, but for people who maybe aren't familiar with the series, can you just give an overview of the series itself?
Absolutely. So there's our world, our time, coexisting magical realm, but there's a veil that separates us. We can't see or cross this veil because we don't have magic, but these creatures that do can and have, and they've been the source of inspiration for our fairy tales and monster stories and mythologies and what have you. Callum Walker is a young man born with the ability to use magic. He doesn't know why. He's trying to make the most of it. He's able to cross that veil. He becomes embroiled in this magical realm. He's learning about this world and all the beings therein. Adventures ensue, and we follow him through the series as he's trying to figure out who he is, where he belongs, because he's too magic for here, too human for there, and master these abilities to survive.
Okay. So at first it's kind of urban fantasy in that there is the magical world existing alongside, but then I feel like now we're more high fantasy in that Callum is on the other side of the veil, so we're getting
Yes.
that world
And
of
he
high fantasy.
travels back and forth periodically through the series. For the most part, we've seen him mostly in the magical realm, but we will see him in other books on our side of the veil as well,
Okay.
for adventures theirs too.
Okay, great. And can you now give an overview? It's always hard to talk about the 4th book in a series because you don't want to give lots of spoilers
Yeah.
for people who haven't read, but can you give an overview of
Yes.
the 4th book?
Callum is trying to find a way to fix the veil that's been broken. And he walks right into enemy territory, not realizing there is a war war brewing. He becomes a prisoner. He's not alone at this point. He's a bit traumatized because of stuff that has happened in the previous book, and he has to come to terms with that and heal from that. And while he's imprisoned, he learns what this enemy has planned for the realm, and that it's not just going to be the realm, it's going to be the world beyond, and every life is in danger. But he also falls in love during this book too, and that helps him to heal.
Okay, so 3 books prior, no love interest.
There's been snippets
Okay,
because I mean, you meet people but maybe they're not the right person, but there have
right.
been snippets,
Okay,
and it's not until the 4th book when it solidifies.
okay. Actually, I kind of like that because it's more true to life, right? We meet
Yeah,
people. There's an
yeah,
attraction, maybe
yeah, there's
something.
attraction there, but maybe it's just not the right person or not the right time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I like that approach. Because sometimes it's like page 2, boom,
Oh yeah, yeah.
soulmate.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read some books where it's always the first man and the first woman that meet and then they fall in love. Or, I mean, first girls that meet, first guys that meet, because I've read books like that too, or I've
Right.
seen books like that as well.
Yeah.
So,
And that's okay. Like I enjoy those as well, but it's nice to have the other option. What about Callum as the protagonist do you think will resonate with readers?
I think what's going to resonate is that he's very down to earth. He's just this. He would rather just be a normal guy, have a normal life, and he's sort of thrown into this. And I've written it from my point of view, like as I'm going, writing my character through these, is like, what would I think if I was in that situation as a real person, and how would I feel? And I've written that in there, and I found that my readers have told me that they do resonate with my character, that he feels very real.
Okay. Thank you. I would imagine that maybe a lot, I don't know a number, but a lot of authors might ask themselves that question of, what would I do if I were my character or if I was in my character's situation? It's an understandable question, right? What would I do in this situation? So you're putting yourself in that place, but by doing so, maybe you can then resonate more with your characters, and so perhaps your readers can resonate more. I always resonate more with characters when I can see myself in their situation and feel like, yeah, you know what? I might have a similar reaction to that. Curious if you feel that way too, or if you like characters who act in ways that are completely different than you might act, and if that resonates more with you. I think it's always an interesting question. How do we resonate with characters? Why do we resonate with characters? We're going to go ahead and take our first break of this episode. When we come back, we'll be talking about some of the secondary characters in the novel and the series. You're tuned into the GSMC Book Review podcast, and I will be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody...
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review podcast and my conversation with author J.M. Shaw. As we go into this second segment, your second and final reminder that if you want to help the podcast in a monetary fashion, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. Helps, as I said, the podcast, of course, but also the network as a whole. You see that link in the video playing next to me right now, but it's also scrolling along the bottom of the screen throughout the episode in case you ever need a reminder. That is, if you are watching this episode, not listening to this episode. For those of you listening to the episode, that's why I always say it at least twice each time, gsmcpodcast.net. Thank you, as always, for all of your support. It is greatly appreciated. Before the break, Jennifer was talking about what might resonate with, was talking about Callum as the titular character of the Callum Walker series, and what might resonate about, what about him, I can say this, what about him might resonate with readers, which is leading into the next question of secondary characters. So let's return to the conversation with J.M. Shaw. There are, of course, secondary characters in addition to Callum, and we get chapters from their perspectives or for their storylines. Are there any one or two that you would like to highlight and talk a little bit about their role in the story?
Well, we don't meet this character until book 3, but I mean, prior to that, there was a character named Agus, and if I had to say any of my characters were like the autistic variety, and kind of Agus would be as close to that as possible, because being an autistic writer, people ask if I write autistic characters. Agus would be the closest to that. He's very stoic. He does have, he's emotional, but he's also a commander in the army, and later on he becomes a general. But he's very matter of fact. But we start to see as the series goes on that he is very fatherly. He's got a family, and he can be very sensitive, and he's very insightful. When we get into the 3rd book, we meet a character called Jax Foster, and I had so much fun writing his relationship and the communication with Callum, because he's the polar opposite of my protagonist.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's good to have those characters. I also love that you don't specifically name him as autistic, but writing a character that people will resonate with, people who are on the spectrum might resonate with, because we don't always see ourselves represented in every book. And it doesn't have to be like overt of this person is autistic. Here is what they do. That is, like, I've read those kinds of books too, and it's like, oh, okay, hi, thank you. But just writing him as a character, I think is wonderful.
And I mean, like, every single character I write has little, insights as bits and pieces of my personality. It's impossible to write characters and know them so in-depthly that you don't put yourself into them.
Right.
So, being autistic, I'm sure that there's bits and pieces of that in every single one of my characters.
Right, sure. As with every author, you write what you know into your characters a lot of times, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of characters and character development, do you like to have a really good understanding of characters before you start writing, or do you prefer that they evolve as you write, or both?
Kind of both. I mean, I have an idea of where they've come from. I have an idea of their motivations. I know, as much like the society they grew up in, some of their beliefs that they've ingrained. I also know some of the religions maybe that they follow and stuff. But then, and what I want them to do as a character and stuff. The rest I leave open, because a lot of times my characters do not want to stay in that mold, and that's okay. I mean, I've had characters where I wrote them to be, the bad guy, and they turn out to be the good guy. And, and it's just it's fun to see what's happening as they take on a life of their own. I start good within good intention, but they don't always end up that way.
I would imagine that can be a little bit of a challenge, though, when you have something in mind and then the character says, no, we're going this way.
Yeah, I usually still think, maybe I can use them for a different purpose. And then I, kind of rearrange things. I'm not as, I was never really a big plotter. I was more of a pantser. I knew where to start. I knew where to end. I knew what needed to happen in the middle. As long as those 3 points lined up, I was okay.
Right.
Now I'm doing a lot more plotting. So I'm feeling like a drill sergeant to my characters sometimes, because I do need them to go in this certain direction. I don't care how they get there, but they do need to go in that direction.
Sure. Which actually, so this is the 4th book in the series. It's my copy is just under 500 pages. So what are the pros and cons to writing a series with rather extensive books, and as opposed to a standalone novel?
I like that I can develop this world a whole lot more in depthly and expand on it. You cannot do that if you do a standalone book.
Yeah.
That being said, you do become quite involved, and it's harder to do other projects while you're working on a long series
Yeah.
or even
How do
short series.
yeah. How do you personally keep track of everything? Characters, place names, world building?
Yeah, I have a sheet for specific names and spelling because I have dyslexia, so I'm terrible with spelling. And even if I spell it incorrectly, if it's grammatically correct, like I had my character go out to assess the situation, but I missed one of the S's at the end.
Yep.
And my editor came back and said multiple donkeys because it was spelled correctly,
Right.
technically. So I have the proper spellings and the names that of specific places and ages or dates or
Hmm.
those kind of things. So I write those down. The rest of the stuff that's more of the abstract stuff, like their belief systems and all that kind of stuff, or their history growing up, that just gets locked in here, and I just know that as I'm going through.
Okay. So talk then about the world building and how you went about creating the world beyond the veil.
So because my character Callum is loosely based on my opinion of young Merlin in our day and time before he
Mm.
became Merlin the magician,
Hmm.
I kind of associated this magical realm with more of a medieval setting.
Okay.
Because it kind of goes along with that and stuff. So because we have technology that we rely on, they have magic. They don't need technology. They're more, living off the land, more rustic, rural kind of setting.
Hmm. Hmm.
But they have kings, they have castles, they have queens, those kind of things, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Feel like setting high fantasy in kind of a medieval type setting makes a lot of sense and is very familiar for this type of series, this type of book. Just feels feels appropriate and makes sense to me as a reader. So, but makes sense that it makes sense to someone who's writing high fantasy. You have to start your world building somewhere, right? Um, I don't even know if that made any sense. Let's go ahead and take our second break of this episode. When we come back, we'll be talking more about the Dergaren and their role in this novel. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author J.M. Shaw. Before the break, we were talking about world building and the process of going about creating this magical realm beyond the veil. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with J.M. Shaw. And pronounce the Dergaren? How do you say it? How do you say it?
I say Dergaren. I don't know if that's correct.
Well, you made it up, so
the word looked cool.
you made it up. It's pronounced however you say it is.
Yeah, I just thought, hey, he's got an apostrophe in it. Let's go with it. I say it as Dergaren.
Okay. So this society has been holding a grudge and seeking revenge for a couple of centuries.
Yes.
How do you go about creating that backstory so that it's because you can't just sit down and say, okay, so let's cover the last 2 centuries, 3 centuries, whatever of this society. Readers are going to bail. How do you write that so that it makes sense and it's there, but it's not?
Well, I planted seeds for this in the early books, and they are related. So we've met the Northern Elves.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that we've met throughout the story thus far. The Jagaren were elves. They're actually they were related. They were living together at one point, and then something happened, and now they're separated. And and I had to, I imagined as I was writing this, I imagined what it was that separated them. A lot of time, it's just political disagreements. So I
Hmm.
kind of went with that basis and kind of expanded on it in a fantasy setting, and threw in some magic, and it works. I feel that it works. I mean, my readers have told me they love it. And I also kind of drew from some, histories and mythologies and stuff to kind of create these Daguerrean. There
Hmm.
are mythologies around different types of elves, and that's what I played off of a lot of.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Do you have a number of books in mind for the series or an ending point for the series?
Yeah, I know where the series is going to end. I have it plotted out in my head. I'm still debating about how many books there's going to be. I'm aiming for 6 to 9.
Hmm.
Um, I keep coming up with ideas though, so I'm gonna have to stop that and like save those for another series or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like that's an easy thing to fall into as a fantasy writer. Like
Yeah, I
you,
get kind of involved in this story, but I do know where the end is, and I have promised my readers that I will write it to the end of this series. I won't just abandon it. I mean, unless, fate happens and I am unable to write or I'm no
right,
longer here.
right. Yes. But fantasy writers are very passionate and they do not like series that might not end. So I'm sure you get questions.
I do, yes.
Yes. And what draws you to writing fantasy?
I like the freedom to, because it's not a very restrictive genre. You can write you can bring in elements of other genres. About the only one that
Mhm.
doesn't really, it's harder to bring in is sci-fi, but you can still have that because I
Yeah.
have our world on this side and we use technology.
Yep.
But it's just it allows me to dream and expand and create whatever I want as far as this world, and there's no limits.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you currently working on book 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on book 5. I've plotted book 6. I'm also working on a side project, which is in another genre. It's a future dystopian Robin Hood meets Romeo and Juliet with hints of Hunger Games.
Oh, geez. Okay. That was a
That'll be a
lot of
while before
words.
that comes out. I know I just released my 4th book this year, and I was
Yeah.
at a book signing, and I had a young lad come to me, and then he asked me, he's like, I want to get your 4th book. When is your 5th one coming out? I'm like, I just released my 4th. It takes me time
Just
to write.
give me some
Yeah, I'm working on it.
time. Yeah. I get it from both perspectives. The kid or the reader who's like, yes, when's the next one coming
Oh, I
out?
know. I read series sometimes, and I'm like, if they haven't finished their series, I always leave that last book, not like the last one that they've published. I leave that as not read until the next one comes out because I want that buffer,
Yeah.
something to look forward to. It's like I can read that one, and then
Yeah.
the next one's coming out
Yeah.
there too.
Well, and it's helpful because depending on how long it takes to write, you might forget certain elements.
Oh,
So I would have to go back sometimes anyway.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And did you always want to write, even as a child, or did you come to that decision later in life? How did that look for you?
Yeah, so I've been writing for over 35 years. I started writing because I needed an outlet. And my mom had bought me a typewriter at the time, because yes, I'm that old. And I started writing, and it became a hobby and a passion. Once I learned I could create pictures with words, it was like,
Mm,
so, and then it became, like it was started as a hobby, became a passion, then an obsession. Now it's just cheaper than therapy. But I do remember thinking, through these years of like when I was younger, thinking I would love to be a published author and have people enjoy my stories and journey through them on my own. I was too shy to share them, but
mm,
I'd always wanted to be. And then in 2019 I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and I thought maybe writing is my special interest. So I
mm,
just finished the first book's manuscript in my first book of my series, The Ascension. And I thought, I'm going to get brave. I'm going to send this to an editor because the worst they can say is it sucks. And
right.
if they do, then I know, and I'll just write for myself. But it's my thing anyway, regardless. My editor came back and said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So 2 years later, I did. And now I have 4 books out, a 5th on the way, and another one on the side.
That's awesome. Good for you. Because you never know if you don't try, right?
Exactly.
probably not exactly what the editor said, this doesn't suck, but in my head I've decided that that really is what the person said, because that just, you send something thinking, the worst they could say is that this sucks, and if they come back with this doesn't suck, that would be very encouraging. Though I'm sure they had other words as well, but I've just decided that this doesn't suck is how it actually went down. We're going to take our final break of this episode. When we come back, Jennifer's advice for aspiring authors. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author J.M. Shaw. Before the break, we were talking about the path that Jennifer took to publication, how she decided that she was going to write regardless, but that things worked out well and she got an editor, and then things started moving forward from there, and now we have the Callum Walker series. So let's go ahead and return to that conversation. Which actually leads into my next question. That might be a piece of advice you would give to someone, but what advice would you give to someone who wants to write?
Oh, I think the best piece of advice is this is a marathon. It's not a race. If you're looking for quick success, then you're looking in the wrong place. And stay true to your story. Don't write what other people want to hear. Write what the story that's in your heart. And if you keep moving forward and you keep doing the things you're supposed to be doing, you'll end up crossing a finish line. It doesn't matter. It may not be the finish line you expect, but you'll still make it to that finish line, whatever that is.
Yeah. Thank you. When you take time to read, just for you, what do you stick with fantasy or do you read across genres?
Oh goodness, about the only thing I don't read or write. I don't read or write history because I fall asleep. Mystery because I can never figure out who done it, or I figure it out in the beginning and then it's just boring.
Okay.
And although I like some elements of romance, I'm not a huge fan of like romantasy or spicy romance. If there's big enough adventure, then I'm okay with that, but it's just not my thing.
Yeah. Favorite authors?
I just recently discovered Brandon Sanderson. And so, I mean, his books are like that thick. So I've got a lot
And there's a
reading.
lot of them.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, before that, I was a big fan of Stephen King, Margaret Atwood, and I loved that they ventured out of genres and were very like what if, like I am and stuff. And then growing up, I was a big fan of Dean Koontz.
What about your boys? Do they like to read? And if so, what are they reading?
Dog man. Pretty much. I'm trying to bribe them to read something that has more words than pictures. But I do think that, my older one is now 11 and he's getting more into like fantasy novels and stuff. So I have a whole bookcase when he gets older that, he can read from, as long as he doesn't fold the corners, because that's
Right.
that's
He's disowned.
That's wrong in so many ways.
Lots of things in life you can do and be and say, but dog-earing the books, no.
No.
Exactly. Website, I know you have a website, so tell people your website and anywhere they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so you can find everything you need, my social medias, my books, and there are links to find them online for, read about them. And then if you're interested, you can find them online through links on my website. It's www.jmshawauthor.com. And yeah, by all means, follow me, and then you can see when when my next book is getting close to being done, or where I am on my writing journey. I also have an events page if you're in the province of Alberta. My publicist wants me to branch out and look across Western Canada, so eventually I will be branching out a little bit beyond the province, my home province. So
Okay, that's a lot of branching. Western Canada is very large.
yeah, that's quite a lot of territory to cover.
Exactly. Jennifer, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you highlighted or mentioned at this time?
I think I covered everything. I can't think of anything unless you have any questions.
No, I think I've
I can't think
asked
of anything.
my questions, but I do want to say thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. I know that your husband took the boys so that you could have some peace and quiet,
Yeah,
so
they're at a
thank him
birthday
as
party
well.
right now.
But I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This is fun. I love this. I mean, who doesn't want to talk about themselves, right?
And yeah, and what you've created, exactly. Thank you again to Jennifer for taking the time to talk to me about not only Forsaken Souls, but about the series as a whole. As I've said a couple of times, if you're a fan of fantasy, whether high or urban, then there might be something in this series to appeal to you, that will appeal to you. Also, there are 4 books out, and as I mentioned at one point, this 4th book is my copy was just under 500 pages. So that gives you plenty of reading material if you want to start a new series. Definitely check out her website and look at her books, see if there's something that you want to read, and maybe you want to wait till more of them are out. But like I said, there's a good chunk of reading that you could do with the first 4 books in this series. So yeah, hopefully you'll check those out. In the meantime, of course, you know what? I just walked into that sentence and I'm not entirely sure where I was going with it. I started with in the meantime, but I'm not sure that's what I meant. Let's back up and start that again. I was saying thank you to the author, to Jennifer, for joining me. I was encouraging you to check out her books. I would also encourage you to join me next time for the next author interview. I have a returning author joining me for next week's interview. That author is Michael J. Cooper. He was here, he's been here twice before. This will be his 3rd visit. He was talking about the first 2 books in his historical fiction series that starts in the early 1900s during the First World War. This one is actually a prequel to that series, quite a bit of time in terms of a prequel, because this one is set in 1290. So instead of 1920, and I keep transposing the numbers in my head, this one's 1290. So we've got a good chunk of time in terms of history, but this is a prequel to that series. We get some of the backstory to many of the elements that Michael has talked about in the previous 2 episodes that he's been on. So if you want to go back and listen to those episodes before that interview, that would be great. If you want to, but I encourage you to join me for that conversation with Michael, especially if you have read this series, if you're a fan of the series, or if you are a fan of historical fiction in general. I always enjoy when Michael is on the podcast, enjoy talking to him. So please join me for that episode. Now, in the meantime, if you are a fan of this podcast and you have not done so already, I encourage you to please like, follow, and subscribe to on whatever platform you're either listening to or watching this episode on. Said at the beginning, say it every episode, really does help the algorithm, gets the podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. If you haven't done so already as well and would like to, please leave a positive review. Can be starred, it can be written, but that is a huge help to the algorithm and greatly appreciated by me. Thank you so much for doing that. If you have already done it, great. If you are thinking about doing it, please do. And in advance, if you do it, thank you for helping this podcast get out to more people. Also, you can follow the podcast on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. You would think I'd be able to spit those out more easily every week, but Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Find the podcast. By extension, you get me. Ask me questions. Tell me what you're reading, etc., etc., etc. I'm nosy. help fulfill that nosiness and tell me what's going on in terms of books in your life. I love to hear it. I hope you're having a great week. I hope that it's not too crazy, but my main hope, though, is the same that it always is at the end of every episode, and that is that you have so much time to read, that the universe just gives you plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book, or as many books as you can stand up to in this week. Thank you, and I will talk to you next time.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to